What if I told you that one of the most dangerous conflicts in human history was a war where the two main enemies never officially fought each other on a battlefield? No massive invasion, no direct declaration of war, no final decisive battle between the world's two most powerful nations. And yet, for nearly half a century, the planet lived under the constant shadow of nuclear annihilation. This was a war fought with threats instead of bullets, spies instead of soldiers, and ideology instead of artillery. So why was it called the Cold War? What exactly was cold about a conflict that shaped global politics, divided continents, and brought humanity to the brink of destruction more than once? Let's explore right here on History of Simple Things. The term Cold War describes the intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II. These two nations emerged from the war as superpowers, but they represented completely different visions of how the world should work. The United States promoted capitalism and democratic governance, while the Soviet Union championed communism under a single-party state. The ideological divide was so deep that cooperation quickly turned into suspicion. Although they had been allies against Nazi Germany, once the common enemy was gone, their differences became impossible to ignore. The tension didn't erupt into direct combat between American and Soviet forces. Instead, it simmered, dangerously and persistently. The phrase Cold War was popularized in 1947 by American political advisor Bernard Baruch, and soon after used widely by journalist Walter Lippmann. The word cold was chosen very deliberately. In traditional wars, what we might call hot wars, armies clash openly on battlefields. Think of World War I or World War II, where nations declared war and fought directly with massive troop deployments and open combat. But during this new conflict, the United States and the Soviet Union avoided direct military confrontation. They never officially declared war on each other. There were no American and Soviet divisions charging at one another across Europe. The hostility existed, but it never ignited into full-scale direct warfare between the two superpowers. However, calling it cold can be misleading. While the United States and the Soviet Union did not fight each other directly, they were deeply involved in numerous proxy wars around the globe. In places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, the two powers supported opposing sides with weapons, funding, and strategic guidance. In the Korean War, American-led United Nations forces fought against North Korean troops, backed by Soviet and Chinese support. In Vietnam, the United States attempted to stop the spread of communism, while the Soviet Union supplied North Vietnam. These conflicts were devastating and very real for the millions caught in the middle. The war may have been cold between the superpowers, but it was burning hot in many other parts of the world. Another defining feature of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race. After the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the Soviet Union raced to develop its own nuclear weapons, successfully testing one in 1949. From that point on, both sides competed to build larger and more powerful arsenals. Hydrogen bombs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and nuclear submarines became symbols of national strength. The terrifying concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, meant that if either side launched a nuclear attack, the other would respond with equal or greater force, leading to catastrophic destruction for both. This balance of terror kept the conflict cold because direct war would have meant potential global annihilation. Espionage also played a central role. Intelligence agencies like the CIA in the United States and the KGB in the Soviet Union engaged in covert operations, spying, sabotage, and political manipulation. Governments were overthrown, secrets were stolen, and propaganda campaigns flooded media channels. The battlefield was no longer just land or sea. It was information, influence, and perception. Even space became part of the competition. The launch of Sputnik in 1957 by the Soviet Union sparked the space race, pushing the United States to accelerate its own space program, eventually leading to the Apollo moon landing in 1969. Technological achievement became another front in this silent struggle. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of the Cold War came during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. When the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. coast, the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. For 13 tense days, President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in high-stakes negotiations. Ultimately, both sides backed down, and the crisis was resolved without direct conflict. It was a chilling reminder that the Cold War could turn hot in an instant. The Cold War officially ended in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The ideological battle that had defined global politics for decades dissolved almost overnight. But the name remains a powerful reminder of how close the world came to catastrophe without ever seeing a formal declaration of war between its two biggest rivals. It was called the Cold War because it was a war of tension without direct large-scale combat between the main adversaries. A conflict fought in shadows, through allies, through threats, and through relentless competition. In the end, the Cold War teaches us that war doesn't always look like armies clashing on open fields. Sometimes it is quieter, subtler, and far more psychologically exhausting. It can freeze the world in fear without a single official battle between the primary enemies. And that chilling reality is exactly why history remembers it as the Cold War. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.